Hi, I'm Jill with PMC Supplies, and today we're going to be doing some wax carving. So in front of me I have some tools that will be helpful to carve some wax. First we have some hard green wax that comes in a variety of thickness sheets, so multi-purpose. You'll be seeing that soon. I often work with an alcohol lamp that we're going to fill with our fuel. It has this really handy little cap that you do want to put on when you're not using it so that your fuel doesn't just evaporate out. We have some wax burrs specifically made for wax carving. You can see that there's so many different shapes here. Should be able to really get in where we need to with these. Put these in our flex shaft. We have also some steel tools that are great for working the wax when it's hot. So a variety of shapes and sizes. We have some files, and they're tiny little things, but they have sort of different angles and different shapes. This one's triangle, square, this one's rounded, this one's flat, so we have a little bit of everything. We have spiral saw blades, great for cutting lots of variety of materials, but that'll be great for cutting our wax. Here is a mandrel that's made specifically for making wax rings, which we may or may not use today, not sure. This one you're not hammering anything against, which normally you would be doing with a mandrel, but this one you're literally scooping away the material, your wax, if you're making a ring, and the further you scoop, the bigger it's going to get, and you can use your sizing as well. We have a butane micro torch that we're just going to use as a lighter today, and our denatured alcohol. Denatured alcohol, if you don't know, is a clean burning fuel, so we want to use that so we don't have any soot, any smoke that's coming off of our lamp here. So we don't actually sell the denatured alcohol, but you can get it at any hardware store, super easy to find. So I went ahead and put our spiral saw blade in our frame. If you want to see another video on how to do that, you could check out the link right here. So this part I like to do at my workbench, and this beautiful bench we sell at PMCSupplies.com. Absolutely wonderful bench. So first we're going to draw in our form that we're going to cut out with our spiral saw blade. I think I'm going to do a sort of basic stick figure man or woman. Doesn't really have anything that makes it a man or woman. A person. A stick person. Gonna make it maybe into a pendant, maybe into a keychain. So I'm just drawing here and getting a rough idea for where I need to cut. Just scratching away at my wax. If you have a template of any sort, you can also use that. Hopefully no one interprets it as a voodoo doll of any sort, because it's not, it's just a fun character. Okay, so now I have my outline and I'm ready to saw. This wax is super easy to cut. No resistance. So for the center area in the head, I can cut it out. I can drill it and put my saw blade in and cut a hole. I don't necessarily need to because I can do that when I'm in the wax. So in this case, I'm just gonna leave it, but if I wanted to, that would be a very easy thing to do. So basically, I'm just going to use my wax tools to create a hole in the center. So now I'm going to take my piece over to the table and start working it with my fire. Okay, so now that we've sawed out our little stick figure here, we can start working with the fire and getting it to be a little bit more the form that we're looking for. So we're going to fill our lamp with denatured alcohol. It doesn't need to be filled to the top, but the wick needs to get wet. That's the purpose of the denatured alcohol, is that it's wetting this wick And the wick is holding the fire, which we're going to be working with. So I can feel that my wick is pretty wet. So let's get started. This will last maybe 3 hours or so. I'm just heating up my tool. Get nice and warm. Handle's not getting hot. Only where I'm focusing the heat it's gonna get hot. And then I can also test it out by, coming against my wax. If it's melting it, then it's good. If not, I need to go a little bit more in the fire. It will cool down pretty quickly too. I like to use this dark green wax. It's hard, so when I put it in my fire, it's not gonna melt. It will melt if I keep it there, but I have a little bit more wiggle room here. I could do more with my fire. I can use it to smooth my surface. If I wanted to remove some material, I could hold it there and it will start to melt. And it cools pretty fast too, so even if I do keep my piece in the fire, it will be hot if I touch it now, but give it a few seconds and it will cool down pretty quickly. So I can work directly with my fire, put my tool directly in the fire. I've cut this really roughly out with my spiral saw blade, and now I'm just smoothing it out. I want to get really nice and round edges. I want it to be really smooth. I want each body part to blend in with each other. So I'm just trying to even it out right now. I'm rounding these edges because it's very square-like. And I can also use my tool to remove material. So if I want to remove material, I can sort of hold my tool down and scrape it away. I could transfer that material somewhere else. And I can create new shapes. Might get a different tool here. Right now I'm looking for something that I could poke a little bit more, and I can also drill this section out, but there's no need. I can okay, so now I sort of punctured a little hole with this tool. Open it up a little. I'm going to remove that material. Normally I'm working on a tray and I can just wipe it on the side of the tray. It's great working the wax hot because there's no mess. When I'm filing it, when I'm sawing it, it's leaving a lot of little pieces everywhere. But there's basically no mess here. These little stringy thingies. Okay, so now I've got this hole here. I'm just gonna put it right on my fire. So yes, I'm trying to melt some of this because I want it to be a more natural shape. Now, if I drip wax on my skin, it is going to be very hot and it is going to burn me. So I want to be mindful, if I am dripping it, where it's going. Especially this wax stays hot for a little bit, so once you get it on your skin, it kind of lingers. I'm just gonna like put the whole thing in, and then we're gonna file it a bit. And if I melt my wax so much that it does start dripping, the best way to keep it, if you don't want it to drip, if you want it to stay where it is and you're happy with your shapes, best thing to do is move it. Move it really quickly. Don't keep it in one spot because it's going to want to drip. If you move it really quickly back and forth, it won't. So whenever you're not using your alcohol lamp, you could just blow it out and replace its cap on. This will keep your denatured alcohol from drying out. For the next step, we're gonna do a little bit of filing. When I'm carving wax, I'm normally going back and forth to all sorts of methods. So I'll do a little filing, do a little refinement, and then sometimes I'll bring it back to the fire. I'm going to use a triangle file because I have lots of triangular forms in this piece. I wanna refine this a little bit more. I'm removing material because I want it to be a little bit more refined here. I don't want there to be any like lumps. I want to make it pretty straight. It's going to take a bit more working, but just trying to get in our little parts. Switch my tool here. I'm going to get a round one. So I think I'm going to go with this one, flat side. Here. So the dust that you're going to get from filing is reusable. You can melt it down. I would just suggest keeping it super clean because once you get particles of anything else and it sort of messes up your wax, it can make hard spots and you kind of just want to consistently wax. So now I'm going to come back to my fire a little bit and I can use this handy little notch here to bring up or down my wick. I'm just flashing quickly in front of the fire because I don't want to melt it. I just want to soften it. Also note that you can just use this method as a finishing method to smooth out your surface if your preferred way of working the wax is filing or just sawing out pieces. You can use this method as a quick final touch, sort of instead of sanding it. Let's say there's a portion here that's maybe not quite how I want it. I want to add a little bit more material here. So I'm going to go back to my dental tool here, get the wax that I had on it already hot, and I just added it right on. Since my little stick man is warm and the wax I'm putting on is warm, it's mending really well. If it was cold, it would stick to it, but it wouldn't necessarily mend. Okay, so I filled in that portion. I'm happier with that shape. So now I've got my stick figure all ready to go, and I'm going to use some of my burrs to hollow out the back of this form. Basically, I just don't want it to be so heavy when I cast it, so I want to remove some of that material. So I've got my Fordham flex shaft. I'm gonna probably use a few tools here. So I love this flex shaft because it's quick change. It's so easy to interchange burrs, drills, anything I'm using. I know that the chuck gets lost and it gets frustrating and then you're like, but with this tool, super easy to change out your piece. I'm going with a pretty big burr here. We might need to go smaller, but let's try this one out. So easy. So this tool's maybe a little bit big. I'm gonna choose a smaller one. I want the piece to be pretty complete before I'm doing this part. That being said, if I mess up, I can go back and add more material, just carefully. This compared to other wax will get so gummy so that you really can't even use it. This wax is a little bit more brittle, so it comes off pretty easy. And tool's clean again. So I probably could spend a little bit more time evening out these hollow forms here, but that's pretty much it. So the next step on our little green person here is to get it cast, which the guys at PMC have already done. So now we have our silver little person here, and we're gonna clean him up and make him into a functioning pendant. Use a little beeswax on my saw blade. It's gonna just make it cut a little bit better, a little easier. It won't get stuck as much. I can also use some wire cutters. So I'm just opening my frame so I can get inside that circle. Hang on a little bit. So I can clean up in his head. I'm just trying to take off a little bit of material because I'm going to do most of the refining with my files, but this is a large area to file away, so I'm just trying to cut off as much as I can. I also don't want to start to saw into the piece by accident, so just taking a little bit off at a time. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at. And now I'm going to move to our files. Got a couple lined up here. Got a nice half round. This is a pretty coarse file. File, as you know, works only one direction, which is forward. So that's what we're going to do. So you can see on the back where we hollowed it out, and all of this silver that would have been there if we didn't. So we saved a lot of metal there, and a lot of weight as well, because it would be much heavier. So I'm going to try out this ring mandrel so I don't have to hold it with my fingers. Give me a little bit more strength in holding it. So now I'm gonna try some of these silicone discs. See, I've got some pits here that I'm not really able to reach. So I'm gonna try this coarse white silicone polisher, is what they're called. Notice how I'm keeping it moving, because if I keep it in one place, it's gonna make too much of a divot. I think I'm gonna actually go over the whole piece because I like the texture it's bringing. I get the hard to reach places with this little one. Same thing, just different shape. Okay, so I'm all set. I'm gonna wash my hands, wash the piece with some soapy water, and then we'll move on to our next step. So I cleaned my piece now, so we'll be ready to solder on it. And our next step is to anneal this silver wire. This way we can make a jump ring that's gonna be soldered to the top of our stick figure. So I have my fire brick here that I'm gonna be heating on top of. 16 gauge silver wire here. And it's not going to take much to anneal it. I'm just going to make it a dull red. I just want to soften it a little bit. Silver is pretty soft, but just to make it a little bit easier when I'm making my jump ring. And we have this nice micro flame butane torch here that we're going to be using. Super easy to use. Sterling silver is pretty soft as is, but I just want to make it a little bit softer so that when I'm making my jump ring, it bends really easily, because this wire is relatively heavy. It's not super thin, so you know, it might fight back a little bit. So I'm just annealing it, making it softer, allowing those molecules to rest. I'm not holding my flame in one place. I want to get the whole thing pretty even in temperature. That's probably good. Even though it's not glowing, I know that that's probably good. So I'm gonna quench it in my pickle, which you cannot see. Quench it in the pickle. I'm just trying to determine how big I should make my jump ring. So I want it to be substantial, but I don't want it to stand out. So I think I'm gonna go with this the second smallest one here. So that's gonna be our jump ring. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the size in relation to the size of the piece. Anything smaller, I think, would just be too flimsy. So I want it to be strong. Okay, there we go. A little bit of material in there. I'm gonna run my saw blade in there again. should have done it. I should have gotten rid of any material in there that was stopping it from closing all the way. Close it again. There we go, it's better. Careful, because if you're doing this, the jump ring could fly across the room or hit you in the eye. Okay, great, okay. So I'm happy with it, let's see. So it's gonna go on here. Okay, so use my ring mandrel again to hold this tiny thing. Use the flat side this time. So there's multiple ways that you can do this, but the reason I am doing it on our seam is because everything's gonna be soldered in one place. Okay, and I'm not gonna take too much material off. I'm gonna compare it. So that's what I'm trying to imitate, that shape there. We're quite close. I want to make it a little bit rounder in the center, a little bit more. But I don't want to take off too much material because I cannot put it back. Okay, that's absolutely perfect. Basically, I want as much surface area of both pieces to be touching. That will mean that I have a better chance of mending these two materials together. So I'm using a third hand and some cross-locking tweezers to hold my piece in place. And let's just see what the best angle is here. Okay, so you have some handy flex here. A little bit of flex there. Flex there. And as you know, we need the flux to allow our solder to flow. Ah, here we go. Okay. It's really hot, but there it is. So once we're putting heat on this piece, it's gonna get dirty, it's gonna get oxidized, the flux is gonna make it really filthy. But we're just gonna throw it in our pickle and you'll see how clean it is when it comes out. It's gonna clean all the oxidation and any flux that remains. Okay, so we're all soldered. Our solder flowed really well all throughout, which is exactly what we're looking for. If it didn't flow, it would want to break off, it would be brittle. We want it to be all one piece essentially. It's well in proportion to the piece. It's a little bit substantial, so we'll be able to hold the weight. Once we do put on a chain, or you can put on a leather cord, really anything you want. You can put on multiple chains since it is a more substantial piece. Yeah, so that's our pendant. And everything you've seen here today is available at pmcsupplies.com, and as always, free shipping. Make sure you check out our other videos on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, check us out on Facebook, and yeah, thanks.